Hello, and welcome to the Bite-Sized Theology Podcast Extended Edition, episode 41. Coming to you from three fellas who would each occupy one spot in the top three in an ugliness competition. It is Thursday, when is this going up? We're going to call it tomorrow, 8/27, August 27th, the 27th of August. I'm your host, Aaron Lively. Joining me this week is Sage Blaylock.
Afternoon, folks. Been a while.
And John McCord.
Been a while because our feelings keep getting hurt from these introductions. Just go hibernate and weep.
That's my goal. I just want to make you all feel as bad as possible.
Well done, sir. Well done.
Smashing success, my friend.
Good. You know, everybody needs some time to just lay in bed and cry for a little while. So that's what I'm planning on doing for you guys. You know, not enough emotional vulnerability in this space. Let's get it going. You know, let's get it going. How are you doing, Sage? How's life?
It's good, I think. Work is going decently well. I've been working on some writing projects that you all are familiar with, and some of you may one day read because I'll have to post it on the internet because no one will make it. So it's good. It's good.
All right. How about you, John? How's life?
Well, I'm chewing a piece of chocolate right now, so that's pretty good. You know.
That is pretty good. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got bags under my eyes that currently are covered up by my mask. So that's how you can tell. Things are swell.
That's great. Yeah, I second the bags under the eyes. That's kind of where I'm at as well. Great. Well, now that we're all exhausted, it's time to get started. So apologies, everybody, for a wonky content schedule. I think we all hit burnout mode hard the last couple weeks. That could have been better communicated to you, so sorry about that. Check out our social media for updates there, and one of us will post something if we need to. Just a heads up that we will be taking Labor Day week off, but that is a couple weeks from now. So just keep that on your radar. Another thing to keep on your radar is Oktoberfest is on the distant horizon. I'm a planner, okay? So I'm looking at it. It's a couple months from now. It's a little ways. But for those of you who do not know, Oktoberfest is the annual celebration of the start of this podcast, where the three of us will crack open a beer on the podcast, play some games, and spend the entire time answering your questions and getting really vulnerable. Basically everything this podcast represents in a much longer, more in-depth format. Lots of dumb stuff and fun mixed with some honest discussion and some vulnerability. We will keep plugging that for a bit because we need your questions in order to make that episode work. So please, if you are interested in having your question asked on the episode, please write us at bitesizetheology.com/contact and specify in that you are writing for the Oktoberfest episode. We will have a dedicated page for that like we did the previous year. But stop everything you're doing. Put your car into park, put this podcast on pause, and write us at bitesizetheology.com/contact. We need your questions. So feel free to listen in. Whenever that fateful day happens, it will be towards the very end of October. Crack open a beer with us or a seltzer water or whatever it is you vibe with, and we will hang out for a while in as much as is possible in a podcast format. All right. Great. So now that you have done that, we've allowed some space for that. You've written us for sure, right? We will continue this podcast now. Okay, moving on. Now it is time for our opening segment, which is
Aaron Ort's Corner.
Yeah.
all
All right.
right.
For those of you who do not know how this works, Sage and I are giant sports nerds. This quarantine has been rough on us, mainly because, one of the loves of our lives, sports, was gone. But it is back and better than ever. Well, not better than ever, but it's back and it feels better than ever. Aaron is not so much of a sports nerd. This
Not at all.
quarantine was rough on him, but
Oh,
not
yeah.
because he was missing sports. So really, he doesn't understand the pain that the rest of us went through.
That's right. Not even close. You guys are suffering way more.
We have a trivia contest with Aaron where we say, "Yo, Aaron," each of us will ask Aaron 3 questions. If Aaron gets the question right, then he gets. Are we doing 2 points or just 1 point? 2 points.
Maybe we should do
He keeps
1 point.
beating us.
He keeps winning, so maybe we just give him one. But
1 point this
Guys,
week. 1
that's
point.
awfully
Actually,
harsh. You're not even
we'll give
weighting
him
my
2.
questions. Dang it.
We'll give him 2 points because he's not going to get any of mine.
he's not going to get any of mine either.
This will go great.
So we'll give him 2 points, and if he answers correctly, then he'll win. And if he doesn't, then we get a chance to answer, and we'll see who is the biggest sports nerd out of us. Aaron has really kicked our butts the last couple of weeks. Okay.
I just read the encyclopedia every chance I get, and the encyclopedia has a lot of sports in it.
If
learned.
sports nerds are known for one thing, it's reading the encyclopedia.
It's absolutely true.
All right. Sage, why don't you start off with your question to Aaron, and we'll get it rolling.
All right. So there are 2 themes for my 3 questions. Number 1, basketball's back. The playoffs have been really good so far. Also, I like being right. And sometimes I'm really right about basketball. One of my dream jobs is to be a scout for an NBA team, to be a GM of some kind in the scouting department. So my questions will be related to the NBA and specifically players about which I was right before other people knew how good they were going to be. I was there first. So
I have
number
a
1.
very unfair advantage about this entire thing because
Yes.
anytime Sage has a sports take, he just texts it to me.
I do.
So really, this is more of a test of our friendship than sports knowledge. So I'm just as nervous as you, Aaron.
Okay, that's great to know.
All right.
I
so
love fear.
Number 1. Which former Kentucky Wildcat at 23 years old is the youngest player with consecutive 40-point playoff games since Tracy McGrady in 2003?
The leopard.
You know?
I hope that's his nickname. That'd be really cool. That's a good nickname if it works. Unfortunately, no.
Okay.
John.
Kentucky Wildcat who has 2 consecutive 40-point. So I know you were right on Karl Anthony Towns.
I was.
Kentucky Wildcat. Yes. And so is that him? Is it him?
It is not. The answer is Denver Nuggets star Jamal Murray.
Jamal Murray.
Dude,
Forgot
just
that he
like
played at Kentucky.
as an 18-year-old could just move around screens and get open, and like his body language and his ability to square up for jump shots and like just unbelievable. Like a professional basketball player at 18 years old, and he's been incredible. He's been fantastic in these playoffs.
Lately, he's one of those guys that can score 10 points or he can score 40, and you're not going to be surprised by that. And he's been that way for the last 2 years. So he's really got to do this more.
But he is 23, so he's got plenty of opportunities to do it.
He is young.
And they've cut it to a 3-2 lead, so
That's
we're
true.
still in. Let's go.
All right. So nobody gets a point that time. Aaron, are you ready? My question is really a test of not only your sports knowledge, but
Okay.
your spelling as well.
I love
So,
spelling.
Yes.
I spell every
So I'm
day.
gonna give you the sports. I'm gonna give you a sports fact and then
Okay.
ask you the question. Okay.
Okay. All right.
Actually, I'll give you 2 chances, so you can get 4 points on mine.
Oh,
Okay.
all right. Okay. All right.
All right.
He will win if he gets this.
Aaron,
Yep, that's what I'm hoping.
who was the MVP of the NBA last year?
MVP.
Most valuable player. Who won most valuable player?
LeBron James. It's just going to be my default answer for anything
Okay.
in the NBA.
I mean, he was in the
outside of
conversation, but it was not
leopards.
him.
Okay.
Okay. So it was not. It was a guy named Giannis Antetokounmpo. So your question is spell Giannis Antetokounmpo.
Giannis? Oh.
He's Greek, if that helps.
This is going to go very badly. Y-O-N-E-S.
Stop. You stop. Incorrect. Okay.
All right.
Sage. I don't want to ask you. I don't want to ask you this because I don't want you to get it. Yeah, no, that's
Yeah,
that's the problem.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm just gonna give you a point. We'll move on.
Okay.
Good.
Beautiful.
All right. Maybe next time.
After one question, I lead 1-0-0. Number
All right.
2 of the basketball Sage was right questions. Which former Duke Blue Devil is the star and leading scorer of the Boston Celtics? Who you got, Aaron?
Beelzebub.
It's a fine answer.
Okay.
I'm open to giving you a half point for that.
Okay. All
John's
right.
good- if John's
take it.
good.
Sure.
It's a good
Sounds
devil
good.
joke. All right.
A
Yes.
half point rounds up to
Jason-
1 point, so that's all that matters
Yeah.
to me. Could also round
Jason
up to
Tatum.
5.
Yeah, that'd be Jason Tate.
That would, in fact, be Jason Tatum. A friend of mine, big Boston Celtics fan back at Div School, he wanted Josh Jackson instead of Jason Tatum, and he was disappointed. And I was like, dude, this guy has a very Kevin Durant-like game. Dude can get buckets. This is a 20 to 25 point a game scorer. Man, I was right.
You were right. You were right.
Great.
All right. 1 to 0.5. Okay. Aaron, who won Defensive Player of the Year this year in the NBA?
It would have to be a guy who holds a shield because he's a defensive player.
Yes.
Link from the Legend of Zelda series.
That is incorrect. It was
Okay.
Giannis Antetokounmpo. So your
Okay.
question is spell Giannis Antetokounmpo.
Can I spell just the last name?
Yes, you can spell just the last name.
This is also going to go badly. A-N-T-E.
Correct.
D-I.
Incorrect.
Okay, all right. Oh, gosh. So close. Okay.
Yeah. All right. Sage, you get a point. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Last round.
All right. So this is another one I'm very proud of. Obviously, it's on the list. Number 3. Which former Kentucky Wildcat and current star of the Phoenix Suns became a household name in leading his team to an 8-0 record in the NBA bubble? Who you got, Aaron? I'll give you a hint before you say anything. I'll give you a hint.
Okay.
This is a book. This is a book. I don't want to show the book. I don't know how copyright, all that stuff works. Book.
I don't think enough people are watching for that to be honest.
That's so
Okay,
true.
perfect.
If we get hit with a copyright claim, that's like a success for our popularity.
Our final success.
Our final success. Yep. So you just said that's a book. So I'm going to guess that's a book. And that's my final answer.
A fine guess,
Okay.
which is incorrect. John, who you
Okay.
got?
It's Devin Booker.
It is Devin Booker.
Okay. That was close.
All right. Here we go. So this is the thing. Aaron has 0.5, but he has a chance to get 2 points on this question. I have 2. Sage has 2. Give me points, but he'll have to answer this last one. Okay, Aaron. Spell Giannis Antetokounmpo for 2 points.
Okay. All right. I'm doing last name. A-N-T-E-D-E.
Incorrect.
No!
All right. Sage,
All right.
for the win. Spell Giannis Antetokounmpo.
First name. Giannis.
Oh, my
That's
God.
right.
All right.
Giannis.
Last name. Antete.
Incorrect.
Oh, no.
T-O.
Oh.
Take that.
Giannis Antetokounmpo. G-I-A-N-N-I-S.
Because it was going to end Koumpo.
Whose sports
Yes.
corner is it now?
Oh.
It's going to be Sage's.
No, we're tied.
Yeah, we're tied. We need some sort of tiebreaker.
Aaron, ask us a sports question.
Any
Okay.
sports question you got?
What shape is a football?
Oblong. Let's go. Game, set, match, boys. It's oblong. It is an oblong shape.
Is that what it's actually called? I don't actually
It's
know the
football.
answer to this question.
It's football shaped.
Googling right
Listen.
now. Hang on. What shape is
You
a
both lose. It's a tie. I'm not asking any more questions.
ball? A football is a prolate spheroid shape.
Oh, so you're incorrect.
So it looks like
Obviously.
I'm
It
out.
was a spheroid shape. All right. That's enough of that.
Perfect. The perfect ending. The perfect ending to the game.
Okay. All right. Wait. So I have one more. Hang
Okay.
on. Hang
Okay.
on. Okay. I'm going to ask you a nerd question instead.
Ooh,
Off the
I like
board.
it.
I like it.
Tiebreaker. Okay. The latest character added to Super Smash Brothers has arms made out of what?
Has arms made out of has arms
I'll give you a hint.
Okay.
It's stretchy. The arms stretch.
has arms made out of rubber? Is it Rubber Band Man?
Nope. Not
Okay.
rubber bands. Sage.
Not rubber
Go for
bands.
it.
Something stretchy. What's stretchy?
Okay, wait.
bubble
Stretchy.
gum.
All right. I'll give you
Bubble
one
gum.
more hint. You're both wrong.
Okay.
I'll give you one more hint. It is
Ah.
something you eat.
Okay.
Noodles.
That's correct. John, that is
Noodles?
Yes.
correct. All right. Noodles. Ramen freaking noodles. And that's it. That's all I got.
Oh, I think I knew this. I think I saw this somewhere. That's disappointing.
Oh, yeah. You know, you win some and you lose some, right?
Yeah.
There we go. That's it. That's Aaron's Sports Corner, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. Wow, incredible. If you want more of that, then please feel free to continue listening to the podcast. And also, if you are interested, please leave us a review on the podcast app of your choice. That is how we increase the visibility of this podcast. And that is it. That is basically it. It's just total nonsense mixed with some theological conversation and all of that good stuff. So if that kind of is your jam, then leave us a review. If it's not, just tell us how much you hate us. You know, that's what okay.
With a
maybe not.
5-star review. Tell us how
Okay.
much you hate us.
Yes, 5-star review, and make sure your words can be
Don't
honest,
hurt.
but just make sure the stars are dishonest if you hate us. All right. Thank you all for listening. Now it is time for our main topic. So we have done a few weeks of lighter topics and 2 in a Canoe episodes. So this week it follows that we're going to sink our teeth into something a little bit more heavy and topical. So as you all know, we've been doing a series on our bite-sized episodes on heresies that have come up throughout history. And a heresy sounds like it's a harsh word, but really it's just another word for a false teaching. So a heresy wasn't just a disagreement, but it was a teaching that went against the core of what Christianity was. It was something specific to Jesus that contradicts the eyewitness testimony we have about him. And so the reason we're studying heresies is because false teachings haven't gone away. We talked about some of those false teachings on this podcast before. The apostles John and Paul both warn against false teachings in their writings, and those warnings still do apply to us today. So today we're going to talk about Americanism. So this won't be controversial at all. I guess the first thing we should do before we go any further is talk about, or at least define, what Americanism is. So like what do we mean when we say Americanism? Do either of you guys feel comfortable giving an explanation of what you'd say that is?
I mean, we can make this pretty broad, but what I would say when I am talking about Americanism or some sort of American nationalist version of Christianity is a version of Christianity that is deeply infused with like American symbols and American history and American mythology in a way where the Christianity couldn't exist apart from the American context. So like Jesus was a white guy. I've heard from very few people, admittedly, but Jesus is American. So this idea that the United States is like a shining city on a hill, and it's ordained by God to bring freedom and peace and justice to the world, like all of this stuff. So mostly that the United States of America is Christianity. Christianity only exists really in our context and is here and then is exported from here elsewhere. And that's what Christianity is. This is the hub of Christianity in the world.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to put it. Sage, you said something in an episode one time that was, if you can't be a Christian without being an American, then like something's gone wrong there, right? So like, it was exactly what you said, that if Christianity exists outside of just our American context, and it's not like America is the production, is the producer of Christianity. That's Jesus Christ. But I do think it's important to like right off the bat, as we get into this, like you can it's not our goal to criticize our country. Like we are blessed to be in this country. That's not what we're trying to do. We are just trying to identify a real thing that happens, which is where oftentimes any culture, you see this with, how our discussion on white Jesus, as early as the 3rd century, Rome was changing the ethnicity of Christ, right? And so then Rome kind of see the synchronization of Christianity and the culture. And so we're pointing that out, that in a lot of places in our culture, we can oftentimes synchronize Christianity with America. Not saying anything is wrong, not saying that we don't love our country. We're saying that we need to point out the things that we have put in the bowl and mixed with Jesus when it comes to the American symbolism, as well as just kind of the American life, because Jesus is a defined person. God defines himself. The Spirit is a defined thing. We don't get to make God whatever we want to make God. So it's really important to identify who God is and to listen to how God defines himself in his word. And so that's really the spirit that we're coming from. We're not saying that like our country's the worst or anything like that. We're saying God defines himself. He tells us who he is. And oftentimes through any country, and including ours, we can mix our American way of life and our policies and politics and symbolism in places that it was never intended to be.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've got a couple quotes of the week, I think, that hit on a lot of what we just talked about. So I'll read a couple, and I would say like let's respond to that, and then also like ask, okay, why does this like seem like it's a problem in the United States in particular? So a couple things. One is from Lauren Winner, who is a historian. She says, I suspect the next 10 years will be years of turmoil and hardship the globe over. And with that will come a surge in a certain kind of American patriotism. Therefore, American Christians will be challenged to remember where our true fealty lies. I'm not saying there's no place for patriotism, but Christians are people whose first allegiance cannot be to a nation state, not to any nation state. Increased geopolitical tension may tempt us to forget that. And then the other one comes from Jerry Falwell Sr., who says, the idea that religion and politics don't mix was invented by the devil to keep Christians from running their own country.
Yeah. Words, lots of words.
Yeah.
Nah,
Lots
words
of words
that let's just Google Jerry Falwell right now, and we'll let his actions speak for himself.
That's probably a good idea.
To be fair, that is the father of the individual who will come up in your Google machine. Yeah.
Is that right? My
That
fault.
was Senior.
That's my that's my bad. Okay. I don't know nearly as much about Senior, Jerry Falwell Senior, than I should. So forgive me for that. I immediately went to his son.
Oh no. Yeah.
I apologize.
There is a Jerry
I really-
Falwell in the news right now. Yeah. Totally.
Yeah.
Given
so-
recent events, understandable,
yeah.
John.
Got you. But seriously though, like for anybody that's a fan of Jerry Falwell Senior, like I don't know enough. I apologize for that. But I disagree with his point. But anyway.
Yeah. Totally. Okay. So what? Okay. I guess question then is what I just said earlier, which is, so why do you feel as though, or why do you think that the United States has an issue with this blend of religion and politics? And we talked a little bit about this in some of our politics episodes, but I think it'd be good to recap that before we just start continuing into the discussion.
So I think a couple things. I think one, this is not necessarily unique to the United States at all. I think that in any major country that Christianity has emerged in, this becomes a thing where this synchronization, this you could call it a pollution, or you could call it an adoption of Christianity into the culture's way of life, right? So you see this in Rome, you saw it in Europe, you see it with the Crusades. I mean, you see it all over the place. But also, I mean, one interpretation of Revelation is that Revelation is kind of directly pointing to this in a way where, like without getting too kind of in depth here, like the mark of the beast, the 666, is the anti-Shema, which is like, rather than having the word of God, like love God on your hand and on your head, you have written 666, which in that day would have been a clear representation to Caesar. So rather than worshiping God, you were worshiping what kind of culture and what has been created and oftentimes adopted by culture, grabbing that Christianity. You see it all throughout the minor prophets as well, right? You have Jeremiah standing outside of the temple being like, this is not the temple of God. Because you see the systemic injustice happening in Israel. So this is not a new thing. This is not something that's just happening to the United States. This is written about literally all throughout the minor prophets. You also see it in with Jesus, flipping over the tables of the Pharisees at the temple where they have co-opted Passover to make money for themselves. And so you see this throughout Scripture, and you've seen it throughout history. So this idea of Americanism and this idea of a country adopting Christianity, then taking out all the parts that are, say, like, the stuff they don't like, is not new, but it is happening, or has happened all throughout the historical world and in our country.
Yeah, and I think there's two levels to the problem. So there's the foundational level, which is idolatry. So it changes the nature of Christianity to an American form of it. So God is our super president, who commands us to go, spread freedom and democracy to the world, to do all these things, and sort of legitimizes all of the sometimes very bad things that the American government does in our own country and around the world. So there's that idolatry level that I think John did an excellent job of talking about. And then in terms of history, so not only what this does to us and God, so it throws us, we're not looking at the actual God. We're looking at a graven image of God. We're looking at a golden calf that we've created for ourselves. There's also the sort of horizontal person-to-person issues that come in with this. So I feel like I talk about Nazi Germany a lot on this podcast. I don't know why. It seems to come up. But if you study Nazism, and to be fair, my thesis in college was about anti-Semitism in the New Testament. So I argue that the New Testament's not anti-Semitic, that anti-Semites use the New Testament to say anti-Semitic stuff because they will use anything to say anti-Semitic stuff. They'd use the dictionary to say anti-Semitic stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the, I mean, the Holocaust, the Nazi regime is the, standard bearer of anti-Semitism in human history. Although the Egyptian pharaoh of the old days might have something to say about that as well. But if you study what's happening in Germany, and John's a big Bonhoeffer fan, so Bonhoeffer is railing against a Germanified version of Christianity. So you have this Christianity that's infused with all these blood and soil things, like language and sort of mythology, and everything's merged together. I think Hitler said Jesus was actually an Aryan, which was his fake master race thing. And Paul was a Jewish man who had stolen Jesus and turned him into a Jewish person, all this stuff. So it's like there was a very extreme version of it happening in Germany. And ultimately, I think what happens is there's a connection between fascist movements in history and this merging of culture and Christianity like that. So there's this, fascism is a very hard to define thing. It's like an ultra-right nationalist movement that manifests in all sorts of different ways. But one of the primary things is using the mythology of the country and infusing that with Christian mythology. So it's like on this deep fundamental level in us, it's combining, for us, the images of George Washington and Thomas Jefferson and all these, great historical figures that, built our
Uncle
country.
Sam, the bald
Uncle
eagle.
Sam, exactly, the bald eagle. From the movie Starship Troopers, which is a satire about fascism. There's like the logo of the Space Marines is an eagle, and we immediately think like, American Eagle, like it works. And then you look, and the Nazi logo, like their standard was an eagle that looked very much like the Roman eagle. So it's like all of these things are connected. And if we don't watch it, we can both lose Christianity by creating an idolatrous image of what Christianity actually is, and we can lose our country in any real sense to evil, because it's happened all throughout. I mean, even in Bolivia, so you had a coup very recently, and there's a group of so the leftist president is ousted. And I'm not going to get into theories about who may have helped in that regard. I'll let you figure that out on your own and do your own reading. But the current regime that has canceled elections and all these things has adopted Christian imagery, and we're waving the Bible around as they're also oppressing people and hurting the indigenous populations in the area. So it's not just happening here. It's not only an American thing. It's a phenomenon that's existed all the way, like John said, basically all the way back to the 3rd century, the 3rd and 4th centuries. And I think today specifically, we're talking about the American version of that. And as Americans, this is something that we need to wrestle with so that we don't end up being somewhere we don't want to be.
Yeah, and let me so I think one thing too that's important to note is it is heavily tied to fascism, which but it's also it can be heavily tied and linked to communism as well, where you got Marx saying religion is the opioids of the masses. And so I think that what you see is any power grab, oftentimes they will co-opt religion, specifically Christianity, because it is powerful. And Christianity teaches you to, be be content with your circumstances, which is if you have somebody in power, you want your populace to be happy or at least content or not rebel. And then they co-opt, be submissive to your leaders to try to stave off any kind of truth telling. So it's just interesting where if you look through some of the worst political movements in history, the Bible is most of the time co-opted, and they always throw out half of it, if not 3/4 of it. They never take it from cover to cover. You never hear them arguing Old Testament theology or like the epistles or the words of Jesus. They do things like Hitler did, which Jesus was an Aryan, and Paul was a Jewish propagandist, and you're just like, okay, so what are you doing? The Bible is nothing to you when you do things like that, when you change who Jesus is and who Jesus testifies himself to be. And so it's just, and again, like, we're not here saying that our country is at the level of communism or fascism, but we're just saying that like there is a problem that consists throughout most of human history, especially with the political rise of parties. And oftentimes the Bible's at the center of that. So we might want to take notice as Americans who love our country, but also Christians who follow Jesus above everything.
Yeah,
that actually made me think of so not a movie I would necessarily recommend to most of our audience. It's definitely of the not safe for work variety. But there's a film called The Campaign starring Will Ferrell and Zach Galifianakis, where they're both running for Congress, and they are trying to outdo each other in terms of who is the most Christian to earn votes. And it's only a joke in that it's ridiculous, but it's not a joke in that that's something that constantly happens all the time. And as Christians, we should be aware of that when politicians are asking for your vote, that most of the time they really just want your vote. They don't care about what you care about. So that's important to know. You are a tool in the hands of politicians if you will grant them your vote because they are the Christian politician.
Yeah, it's super interesting that we talk about this, like where sort of the empires that have come along in the world have sort of co-opted Christianity, co-opted religion in order to, increase their support or increase their power. And it's like, this is really not a new problem, even in terms of like, AD or Common Era or whatever. We could go back to, because I mean, even on the pages of Scripture, like Babylon is sort of the symbol of human self-centeredness, of human like greed, and sort of let's establish a name for ourselves, let's build our own monument, and sort of like that stuff continues today. But I think that for those of us who maybe like, I don't know, for people who aren't as well versed on the pages of Scripture, it's very easy to like look at some of the Christian symbols that get adopted in like a government setting and say, okay, that's in line with Christianity. But that's why we always like say on this podcast, right? We always encourage like, hey, like ask questions of all of your, worldviews that you're adopting there. Does it make sense for like Christian values to be adopted in this way? Like what is actually going on here? Is it like a power grab? Is it something that's being used to promote ourselves? And if so, that seems like something that a Babylon would do, essentially, rather than a real submission to Jesus. And so, yeah, I think it's important to ask those kinds of questions of our nation, of our worldview, of our philosophy, of Christianity, and of God, and like sort of getting down to the truth of what those things actually are. So I guess like my question too is like, why would it be important? I don't know. So, okay, what makes Americanism? What's the line where it's like, now we're in Americanism? Like we've talked about a lot of heresies in our series. What makes Americanism a heresy as opposed to like just a difference of opinion? Is it really that big of a deal? Like what's the difference between patriotism and Americanism?
For me, I think it's idolatry, right? Like, I think it's so hard to put things in order, and it's so hard to put things linearly or on a list. But, Jesus, you should be following Jesus, right? You can I love our country, but I'm a Christian first.
Mhm.
Like I follow Christ, and then everything filters through that, right? So um, part of the reason why I love our country so much is freedom and democracy. And who's a big fan of freedom? Jesus, and so I think you see those things, and it's not about um, tearing down one to lift up the other. You follow Christ, you filter everything through what Christ teaches, and then as the Bible teaches, you be a good citizen. And you try to render to Caesar's what's Caesar's, and you try to render to God what's God's. But it is a solo Christo. It is just Jesus' message, and that should be the priority. That should be the way you walk. That should be the way you talk. And you can, it's that thing. I'll die for Jesus. I'll die for this country. But those two things are not mutually exclusive. But I'm a Christian before I'm a United States citizen, and I love both. But I love Jesus so much more than the other.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to put it. Is which lens do you view everything through? Do you view the world through the lens of I'm proud to be an American, or do you view the world through how can I love the world and bring the gospel to the world? How do you look at what's happening out there? When you look at the news, how are you viewing it? Are you thinking about the political parties and why you hate the one over the other, or whatever the situation is? But I think another test, and then we can move on, is just what bothers you more? Does it bother you more when someone misquotes the Bible or misuses the context of Scripture, or when someone questions Thomas Jefferson's legacy? What bothers you more deeply?
Yeah. And I do think it's important to point out that it's so much easier to learn about our country than it is to learn about God. It shouldn't be that way. But let's be honest, we grow up in history classes. We grow up being an active part of our country. And so you fall in love with it, or you don't, but you fall in love with it, and it's easy because you experience on a day-to-day basis. With Christianity and with God, you have to be still, and you have to humble yourself, and you have to learn about who God says he is, and you have to step out of the boat to experience that, his realness. And that takes more effort. And so I think it can be harder to experience God because of our own flesh. Really, we should be able to walk outside, look at the sky, and be like, God, you're amazing. But I think it's easier to distract ourselves in every waking moment than not do that. So I think it's hard to kind of put those things in order, if we're being real, but it is something that we got to work on, and we got to do those tests. What you're saying, Sage, when you see a statue come down, does it tick you more than when you hear somebody says cleanliness is next to godliness is in the Bible? That's not in the Bible. It's a good sermon by John Wesley, but it's not in the Bible. And that should bother us. And I don't know. It's just an interesting thought, I think.
Yeah.
One thing that I'll be curious to kind of talk about here, and maybe this is, I think we touched on this on politics a little bit, but how should we politically engage? Or do you think we should politically engage? That's, you have the Amish who just are pacifists and stay out of all political, and they drive buggies and horses, but let's not go that far. I like AC. But Or do you think that we should have a very active role in trying to shape this country to be, more overtly Christian? I don't know. That's a loaded
Mm,
question, but I'm just curious of how do you think a Christian should politically engage?
mm,
So I've always had this sort of tension when I've thought about this previously. It's like how should we engage? So like if Christians had all the power, like how should we do it? Should we create a theocracy? One that is fully governed on religious principles, straight from the Bible, or by a pope of some kind, a presidential pope. I'm guessing he wears the hat, but also a suit at the same time. So the way I tend to think about it is in terms of us placing Christian morality on other people who aren't Christians. And I think that's incredibly unhelpful because what's important to know about Christian morality is it's impossible to in any way engage with it in a positive fashion other than coming to the point of, either becoming depressed and feeling bad about yourself for not being able to you know, abstain from sex or, whatever the situation is. Like it's impossible to do. And there's not any sort of spiritual benefit apart from being in Christ. So if you're not a Christian, then there's not really any use, honestly, for Christian morality being placed on you. And then in terms of witnessing, so I don't know, it's difficult to say, but I would say that it's going to be harder to sort of force people who aren't Christians to live that life. There's not a reasoning for them to do that in certain circumstances. Obviously, there you can find studies that say certain ways of living are better than others, and some of those are look good for Christianity to the world. But I don't know. I just think we have to be careful when forcing Christian morality on other people when they aren't Christians, because then, like worst of all, it becomes a legalistic thing. And then you have a culture of people believing they're Christians because they, keep up with the 10 Commandments, even though they definitely don't, but they think they do. So like, I think we have to be careful there to not say like Christians should run this whole thing. We should have all the power. It should be run exactly how we say. I think we should be engaged in the extent that we fight for certain things, like fighting against human trafficking. That's something that the Christian community's been, part of spearheading in the last, decade or decade plus. So I think that's great. And we should be doing stuff like that. We should be fighting for the dignity of human life in every way that we can. We should be fighting for people's freedom to, religious freedom, to be Christians and to also not be Christians, because it's a more sort of tolerant, loving world that allows for more freedom, and we should be open to that. So, I mean, I think that's one way to engage. I definitely don't think we should have our own political party because so many of us disagree within it. And we also shouldn't sign up wholesale for one political party over the other, because we'll just get co-opted and turned into, a single voting block where they can use our Christian symbols to, let us know that they're on our side, even if they're not actually. Political engagement's definitely tough, but
Yeah.
we can't be unengaged.
Right.
yeah. I think in terms of like what we were talking about in terms of Sage, what you touched on a little bit in terms of theocracy, in terms of like building a Christian nation, like history shows like a ton of forcing people into it doesn't go super well. And I would also say that actual genuine love for Jesus doesn't come from saying you can't do this or you can do this, or basically saying the things that you do when you're a Christian, you have to do if you're not a Christian. You know, I think most of the time when people come to know Jesus, it's because somebody loves them enough to share the gospel with them and to sit with them and to be there for them, you know? So essentially saying, hey, we're going to make this a Christian nation doesn't actually accomplish like the goal of ultimately helping people fall in love with the God who made them, because that ultimately is the whole point of the whole thing, right? I would say, like, in terms of like your involvement in the government, I think like there is activity in your government that you can't accomplish on your own. Like there's systematic change that can be done through um, those offices that can't be done just by yourself. So I think that's worth considering. But all that said, the church needs to be the church. People need to be able to love their community. Like if everyone were living as if Jesus, like if everyone were living as Jesus did, if everyone were a good neighbor to the people around them, like we wouldn't necessarily have a need for a lot of the stuff that we would say like the government needs to step in and do. Like we ought to be first and foremost as individuals caring for the people who are closest in proximity to us, the people that you live next to, the people in your city who don't have anyone else. Like ultimately, at the end of the day, like we're responsible for that as Christians, just loving our neighbors and lifting other people up. And it's like, I think a lot of times we will pass a lot of our responsibility towards other people onto the government or onto other entities so that we can feel a little bit better. Like, but I don't think that voting is the extent of how we should be active in our communities. I just don't think that's the case. I think if you're a Christian, there is a responsibility to loving people that you're around. There is a responsibility to living as Jesus did, to love the marginalized in your community and to be there for them and to share the gospel with them. And I think that ultimately is our calling. That's the first and foremost thing. When it comes to your government involvement, I just don't think it's as important. I think there is something that can be said for, like, yes, you should stay informed. You should stay up to date on what's going on in the world. You absolutely should. I don't think that, like, as a Christian, you should be ignorant of what is going on in politics and in your community. And I don't think as a Christian, you should necessarily say, oh, I'm 100% going to be inactive in that space, because there is actually good that can be done. All that said, our first and foremost priority is to love Jesus with everything you are and to love your neighbor as yourself. And that's it. If everyone were doing that, we'd be
There'd be
great.
no need for a government. Like, that's the thing. Like, that's the funny thing to me. Like, the idea of setting up a theocracy, it's like, if everybody was living like they're a Christian and everybody was truly following Jesus, what would the government do? It'd be nothing. Because we'd be feeding the poor. we'd be treating everybody fairly. There'd be no crime. Like everybody would just be living and loving, you know?
And it's funny because I was there's a book I read last year that changed my life. It was basically written by a couple pastors who were in the Colorado area, who basically said that they had like a sit down weekly meeting with like the mayor of Denver. And the mayor was basically like, yeah, you know, like honestly, something that would like make things better is if people were just better neighbors to their communities. And they're like, we've been preaching this stuff our entire lives, and it's only just now that it's clicking how big of a deal that actually is.
Right.
Because if you have neighbors who are there for you, like when something happens, like when an emergency happens, you've got a community that's there for you, you know? Like it's funny that even government officials are saying, like, yeah, like being good neighbors is how you exact real change in somebody's life. And so it's like, it's almost as if the great commandment is one we should be following. You know, it's ridiculous.
Right. And that's the thing, like being good neighbors, being a place of forgiveness, being a place of honestly accountability. Like, if we treat the word of God truly like a mirror to look at ourselves and to try to be more like Christ, and then also speak out for the people who are marginalized, the orphan and the widow, and help the orphan and the widow. You know what? You're going to be politically engaged. And even if because personally, my own conviction is that we need to vote because as an American, like that's my American conviction. However, from a Christian perspective, like if you're serving the orphan and the widow and you're loving your neighbor, you're going to be politically engaged even if you don't cast a ballot. You know,
Yeah.
you just are, because that is important. That's obviously important to our God. So it should be really important to us. So I don't know. I think that's an interesting way to put it. I like that.
Mm. Hmm. Yeah. So dang. Well, as you know, I think we're people who live in the United States, but we're people whose allegiance is ultimately to Jesus. And so if that's the case, and I think like a lot of it boils down to how can you be a better neighbor to the people around you. But do you have any other ideas about like sort of what implications that has, where we're citizens here, we are present here in this space, but our allegiance is to Jesus? How does that affect how we live and how we work in the culture that we're in?
I mean, I think you said it as well as it can be said. It's voting is not the end all be all of our engagement. Our engagement is when we work, we love the people around us. When we live and we love our neighbors and we do our best to be kind to them and help them when they need help. And we, are willing to share the gospel, and we share the gospel. We do both of those things at the same time. We love the people around us and we share the gospel. And we aren't unconcerned with politics. Like I said, I think that can be dangerous if we're completely like not in the loop and don't know what's going on and aren't engaged in any way, and don't see, directions that the country might potentially be going and how that we in our own communities can, stop or reverse, certain negative trends. But I mean, it's simple. We love the people around us, and even if they disagree with us, they don't have any real criticism of us, personally speaking, other than guy talks about Jesus a lot, or she talks about Jesus a whole lot. But that's one of the kindest people I've ever met. That's a wonderful, kind human being who genuinely cares about me, even if I disagree with them.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think we can call it on that main topic, unless anybody else has anything to throw in. All right. Well, great. Thanks everybody for listening. It is now time for Email Land. Somewhere on an island west of the archipelago, several emails have gathered together to form a nation unto their own. It was called Email Land. You've now entered Email Land. Let's look at what the email civilians of Email Land are up to today. I have one email this week. Peer pressure. This is from Cody. Thank you, Cody, for writing in. Peer pressure makes following the crowd seem easy. However, sometimes you have to play to the beat of your own drum. Unpopular opinions can change the world. 3 of my most unpopular opinions are: Pam is the worst character on The Office, In-N-Out Burger is overrated and tastes like trash, and kiwis taste better when you eat the furry skin along with the actual fruit. What are 3 unpopular opinions that each of you hold?
All right, so I think we're going to all give one. We might revisit this question at a later date, but I think we might all give one.
Yeah.
I believe that the 3rd Batman movie in the Christopher Nolan trilogy, The Dark Knight Rises, is the best movie of the trilogy.
Wow, that's
impressive.
something. A lot of people say it's bad, and I disagree. I mean, I don't know if I'd say it's the best per se. I'd have to watch The Dark Knight again because that one is like a work of art. But
it's the best. Mm-hmm. No, it's the best one. Tom Hardy is Bane, and the philosophy is behind the villain is.
I was wondering what would break first,
You're
Yeah.
scared? Oh, you baby.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Exactly.
Yeah, there it is.
So I that's my unpopular opinion.
Great. How about you, Sage?
So mine, pretty simple. Cereal is better without milk.
Oh,
You
no.
run. Come
Oh.
on, man.
Yikes.
So hear me out before you
No.
dissect me. I got to make my argument. We let you make your argument. So cereal's better without milk. The cereal's not soggy. I get the full taste of the cereal that I'm eating. I enjoy the crunch of cereal, and you don't get as much crunch, that intense, beautiful, palate scraping crunch of cereal.
But
You're
I'm
a
sorry?
monster.
all right, rebuttal. But
Okay.
God created cereal to be eaten with milk. Look at all the
Created
pictures, the
cereal.
promotional pictures of your cereal. Like when on the actual box, I guarantee
Fake.
you won't
That's
find
pure
one.
cinema. That's
with
pure
no
cinema.
Are
Well,
you
Not
saying
real.
God's pouring the milk? Talking
Yes.
about manna from heaven.
It's beautiful. It's a beautiful thing. Dairy's
No, man,
probably going to
that's
get like a
just-
Surgeon's
I'm just
General
saying.
warning or something, and we'll all be like, dairy will be like the smoking of our generation.
That's
So just eat honey bunches of oats, preferably with almond clusters, without
oh my
milk,
gosh.
without milk, and then also eat some with milk. I'm just gonna say the one without milk is gonna be better.
Honey bunches of oats with almond crunches? Who
Clusters of almond.
You have to have that
makes it
with
better.
milk because the almonds will choke you to death if you don't have milk to wash
Just-
it
are you?
down.
It'll be like
Have a
the
beverage
Sahara
to drink while you
punching
eat,
you
as
in
you
the
would with
back
any
of
other
the
meal.
mouth.
That's exactly right. That sounds thoroughly unappealing, but thank you for your unpopular take.
Unpopular opinion. All right, Aaron, follow that.
All right. Eggs are absolutely unacceptable if they're not cooked all the way through. Unacceptable.
So what styles are you talking about as unacceptable?
Any ovaries, anything where
Over
the egg
charcoal
yolk
is
is,
Aaron's
it has to
preferred
be
egg.
over charcoal. Yes. If there is any freaking moisture in my eggs, sometimes people will scramble eggs and it's like cooked all the way through. It's really good. Sometimes people will scramble eggs and you can see the little dots of moisture on each individual egg and you'll be upset. At least I am. So I think everyone should have the same opinion.
So I'm not the same kind of extremist that Aaron is when it comes to scrambled eggs being just absolute rubbery, rock hard, whatever he eats. I like a little moisture, but I don't like a runny egg. I'm with you on that. The basic philosophical point there. I think
Okay.
a runny egg is a poor egg. And
Was that
it
opinion
could have
not
been
pop?
better.
I could throw in another unpopular opinion if that one wasn't unpopular enough. Because if you're agreeing with me, I think that's a problem. Okay, I'll
sure.
say-
Do another one.
I'll say one that both of you disagree with.
Okay.
Pet ownership is not worth the trouble. I will happily
Oh, no.
pet other people's dogs, and I love other people's cats. And you know what? If I owned a pet, it would probably be a cat. Let's be honest. But
Mhm.
I will not own a pet anytime in the
I'm going to
near
make you
future,
look
unless
at
I
my
am
dog
coerced.
in the face and tell him.
Okay, all right, here we go. All right, where are you, Bronson?
Yeah,
Where are
for-
you? All
For
right,
the YouTube audience.
all right, Bronson. I can't stand you. I can't. I'm just kidding. I love Bronson. That's what I'm saying. Is I will happily pet other people's dogs. I have no problem coming by and giving Bronson a big old hug. It has nothing to do with him. I'm just amazed that his parents have the patience that is involved in owning a dog. And I'm
You just
amazed
need
that
to learn
you
how
and
to
Jamie,
train
Sage,
an animal.
I'm amazed that you have two cats. Okay, your cats are great. Your dog is great, John. Listen, okay, there's redeeming qualities to pets. I'm just saying, not worth the trouble. I love both of your animals.
I think that you need to learn how to train an animal.
I guess you're right.
Go for
guess you're
cats. Very easy to train. Bring them home, put them in the litter box, and you have trained your cat officially. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. That is pretty
It's
cool.
an unpopular opinion. That's an
It
unpopular
is
Very
Really
unpopular. Yeah, we
I've owned
might
both-
lose fans.
I've owned both a dog and a cat at one point in my life. Preferred the cat. There's redeeming qualities to the dog. Maybe I've just had negative experiences owning dogs in the past. You know what?
You got like one of the smartest breeds. That was your problem. You
And
need
we
to get a
lived on
dumb dog. They
to be
love you
fair-
and they're easy to train.
And we lived on the third floor of an apartment complex, which was negative, very negative in terms of letting the dog out and like going outside and getting some fresh air. Yeah.
I saw this up close and personal. And Jamie and I were over in Colorado for, a few days. I heard the phrase Chester no at least 100,000 times over a 3 to 5 day stretch. So
that's very possible.
Yeah, I saw your trauma personally here. I saw it happen.
So maybe I just need a Bronson in my life, and I just need to stop picking Chesters. Maybe that's really what it boils down to. But I had an amazing cat, and I would still cringe every time I spent $20 on litter every month or so. You know what? $20. And what do I get? I get a cat who's sitting outside of the shower as I step out of it, and he's just meowing it. He's screaming at me at the top of his lungs. He's criticizing me. Like, how does that make me feel about my body image?
Unimpressed.
Yeah. So if you want something mocking you every time you, get out of the shower, I guess that's cool. But I prefer not. Just kidding. I love that cat. I love your all's animals, but I would not. I have no plans to own one in the future. Let's just put it that way.
Unpopular opinion.
Okay. Thank you, everyone, for listening to this podcast. We have talked about many ranges of things on this podcast. That's what we're all about. So if you are new to this podcast, thanks for being here. We are very, very grateful that you've decided to listen to this total nonsense. If you would like to continue to listen to this, please do. We would love to have you. Also, you are also more than welcome to interact with us directly by contacting us. Fill out the contact form on our website, and we can read your very own question live on the Email and segment. You can choose to share your name. You could choose not to. We will not share it if you check the box that says anonymous. So please keep that in mind. We will be happy to work through whatever you've got going on. And we don't have a ton of answers, but we will certainly be able to interact with your questions. That's basically all I can promise. So to anyone out there listening, please feel free to write in your questions to bitesizetheology.com/contact. That is bitesizetheology.com/contact. And again, we will read your questions on the Email and segment. And if you would prefer for us to read them on the Oktoberfest episode in a couple weeks, please make sure to specify that, and we will save it for then. Again, could be related to theology, could have absolutely nothing to do with that. Whatever it is. So thank everybody for listening. I'm going to hand the last word over to Sage.
I am going to hand the last word over to the Apostle Peter from 1 Peter chapter 2, verses 11 through 12. Beloved, I urge you as sojourners and exiles to abstain from the passions of the flesh, which wage war against your soul. Keep your conduct among the Gentiles honorable, so that when they speak against you as evildoers, they may see your good deeds and glorify God on the day of visitation.
There you go. Doesn't get much better than that. All right, everyone. Thank you for listening. Hope you have a great rest of your week.